Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hey, what is up, my artists? Welcome back to another Compare and Contrast. This time on the Friday the 13th movies, the 1980 and 2009 specifically, to basically see which one holds up and which one is better. If you don't remember what Compare and Contrast is, it's been a while, so I will refresh your memory. Compare and Contrast is where we take a look at two movies, specifically usually some that have some type of connection to each other. Mainly, I like to focus on remakes and originals. And we take a look at 5 categories, and at the end of the categories, we tally up every one category that won, basically, and whichever movie got the most score, the biggest score on the board, wins and is the definitive better movie. So we are doing Friday the 13th, 1980 and 2009 today. I'm really looking forward to doing this. These are two movies that I actually enjoy both of these movies a lot. We'll be looking at 5 categories today: story, characters, villain, cinematography, and kills. So, without further ado, we're going to start off with kills. Alrighty, the kills in these movies. We're going to start off with 1980. The kills in 1980, Friday the 13th, 1980, are decent for the time and have great effects, mainly done by Tom Savini. Great guy, great effects artist. I do enjoy some of the kills, especially the one with Kevin Bacon, where he gets basically an arrow through the neck when he's laying on the bed, and now it's a really iconic kill. But I will say I'm a bit disappointed with the kills compared to 2009, because there is some good kills in 1980, but not as good as 2009. 2009 has some really memorable kills, a lot of them as well. I would say the best kill in that movie, and they're a lot more creative, because a lot of the kills in 1980 are just stabs and shit like that. But in 2009, probably the best kill, I would say, is this sleeping bag kill, where he takes one of the girls in it's very confusing. We'll get to the story in a bit, but there's like a couple different timelines in 2009. This is like the second timeline in 2009. But basically he takes the girl and puts her in a sleeping bag and puts her over a campfire and burns her alive. And it looks gnarly and it looks fucking grisly as fuck, and it's honestly a very memorable kill. And right before that, or actually I think it's right after that, a guy gets like impaled with a bear trap, and fucking basically he fucking gets a machete straight to the fucking face. So 2009, I would say, has pretty good kills, but if I had to rank them, especially with how I enjoy them, and more like the kills that I enjoy the most, I would say, and are probably the best, I'm going to have to give this probably to 2009, only because there's a lot more memorable kills. There's a lot more that I haven't mentioned, and there's a lot more creativity to the kills. 1980 does have the fucking benefit of having Tom Savini in as the special effects director, but it doesn't help the fact that it's still not there. I feel there's some that are there, but there's some that are just stabs and aren't the greatest. But I will say, I'm gonna give this to 2009, Friday the 13th, 2009. Kills go to Friday the 13th, 2009. 1980, 0. Friday the 13th, 2009, 1. On to the characters. Alrighty, the characters. Characters for 1980. There was a couple of memorable characters, but most of them were pretty bland. I will say the most memorable people in this movie had to be Adrienne King as Alice. It's sad to see what happened to her acting career after this, because people had just sat there and basically stalked her afterwards. But she was really good in this as the main character, Alice. Kevin Bacon as Jack. Of course, he wasn't in there for that long, but it is Kevin Bacon, of all people, in his first role. So there's that. And then Walt Gorney as Crazy Ralph was probably one of the best performances for the characters. I'm not gonna name the villain until later, because we do have a character section for villains. So villains in this we will get to later. But nonetheless, those were kind of the main people that meant something somewhat in 1980. The Friday the 13th, 1980. But besides that, they had other side characters like Janine Taylor, who played Marcy, Robbie Morgan, who played Annie, Harry Crosby, who played Bill, Laurie Bartram, who played Brenda, and Mark Nelson, who played Ned. But nonetheless, the characters in 1980 weren't terrible. I wouldn't say they were terrible, but I do think they could have been better. But this is also the fact that it could have been better at the time. This was supposed to be just a clone of Halloween, so they probably didn't really care too much, too much about the characters. But they could have done better. Nonetheless, though, I feel the characters for 1980 were decent at best. They had a couple standouts. It's kind of like every other horror movie. They had some characters that are decent at best, but I don't think there was that many that were iconic. So, but Alice is definitely the best character out of the bunch, I would say. So 1980 did a pretty decent job with characters. They didn't have too many roles that were integral, and they had some characters that were just there just to die, which it's a horror movie, so that is the point. So I would say that it was decent for characters wise, but nonetheless, yeah. Okay, so when it comes to Friday the 13th, 2009, it had some actual star power, especially with the main characters. I would say the standouts from this lineup had to be Jared Padalecki, who played Clay Miller and was also one of the main characters in Supernatural. That's what he's mainly known for. And Danielle Panabaker, who played Jenna in this film. She is most well known for her portrayal of Killer Frost in the CW's The Flash. And damn, she is fucking attractive. Nonetheless, those were probably the standouts out of this film. But I will say it does, even though the cast doesn't have that many standouts, the rest of the cast is still good in their own way. We have Amanda Rigetti playing Whitney Miller, Clay Miller's sister. We have Travis Van Winkle, played by Trent. We have Travis Van Winkle playing Trent. Aaron Yu playing Chewie. We have Jonathan Sadowski playing Wade. Juliana Gull playing Bree. Ben Fieldman playing Richie. Aaron Escarpeta playing Lawrence. Ryan Hansen playing Nolan. Willa Ford playing Chelsea. Nick Minell playing Mike. And America Olivio, playing Amanda. So they had a decent amount of people to work with. Of course, a lot of this is due to the fact that it has kind of 3 time periods in the movie. But nonetheless, the characters were pretty decent, and I'm going to give it the win this time again because of the star power they have, especially Danielle Panabaker. Call me a simp all you want, I don't give a fuck. Nonetheless, this goes to Friday the 13th, 2009, so the scoreboard goes Friday the 13th, 1980, 0, and Friday the 13th, 2009, 2. Alrighty, cinematography. The cinematography in these films were iffy at best. I would say 1980 had a very grounded and well-rounded cinematography with the editing and the atmosphere and all that. And 2009 kind of had a shaky, seizure-inducing, kind of a little bit like on the yellower side. When it came to cinematography, it was kind of dark too. When it comes to these movies, I would say that it would work to be darker and tone and stuff like that, but I don't think it worked too well for 2009 in a way, because they really stayed in the shadows with that. But I will say 1980 does a good job of keeping it in a somewhat dark area, but also putting some light areas as well, and just keeping the balance of light and dark when it came to cinematography in there. It also has some POV shots and just like other types of filmmaking that was good. There was this part in 2009 which it had basically like a black and white shot. It was kind of the start of the movie, and there was like a flashback scene, but I feel it wasn't needed really to be black and white or anything like that. It just was there, so it didn't really make any sense to me. But I will say there is some decent like reason that it's kind of shaky and dark and stuff like that, because it was around the time where Rob Zombie's Halloween came out, and fucking the next year after this, the god awful Nightmare on Elm Street remake. Don't even want to talk about it. Nonetheless, I will say there is some reason that it could be shaky, but I don't personally like it being shaky and dark and then the yellowish kind of tint. That is one pet peeve I have with Friday the 13th, 2009. So that is a big thing of why I don't really like the cinematography in that movie. In 1980, I really enjoyed the cinematography, the atmosphere, the light and dark tones in the movie, and everything like that. I would have to give the cinematography for this to 1980 due to the fact that I like it a lot more, and I don't really like 2009's atmosphere at all too well, that the shaky and seizure-inducing lights at some points and everything like that. I will have to probably give this to 1980. So Friday the 13th, 1980 wins cinematography. Friday the 13th, 1980 at 1, and Friday the 13th, 2009 at 2. we have got a score for 1980. Alrighty, which is the best villain? So the villains are quite different in these movies. Like there's somewhat the same in a way, but they're not completely the same. I would say 1980s is a lot more cool, calm, and collected, and 2009's is a lot more in your face, murder happy fucking villain. So the villain for 1980 is mostly in the shadows for most of the time. There's all these stories about Jason and all this, like all these campfire stories basically, and how there was a psycho who murdered 2 counselors back in the day. Now, the thing was, by the end of it, if we find out, the twist is that Betsy Palmer, who plays Pamela Voorhees, is actually the killer, and it works really, really well, to the fact that Betsy Palmer plays the character so well that it's even when I'm about to talk about 2009's villain, I will say 1980 wins this one, but only because of Betsy Palmer's performance and the story behind it and everything like that. So Betsy Palmer makes this performance great just by being there. She was the twist villain, she was in the shadows for most of the movie, and after that she does get killed by Alice and decapitated by Alice, which we never really see Betsy Palmer again in the series, mainly because she hated the series after that. She thought it was a stain on her career, but she's began to love it now. But it does set up for more sequels, even though sequels weren't planned at first. But it does set up for more sequels, and it makes it more interesting for more sequels when we do get the Jason reveal of the next movie. So for that, I would have to give this to 1980. But I will talk about the things that I like about 2009, because I gotta give everything a fair shot. 2009's Jason, really fucking good, really fast-paced, in-your-face, great with the kills, great tone shift from Jason back in the day, great, just honestly a really good way to use Jason, and I really applaud them for doing this, because it's a fresh take on Jason Voorhees, and it's a fresh take on the series in general, with him being this tactical badass and this person who sets traps for people and is just like a hunter pretty much, and just hunts people and kills them easily without even like lifting a finger pretty much, and it's really fucking good. I really enjoy that, but just for the fact that Betsy Palmer did her best role, I would say I have to give this to Friday the 13th, 1980. So, without further ado, Friday the 13th, 1980 on the scoreboard is now tied with Friday the 13th, 2009. So, we have one more category, which is the tiebreaker, and will determine which is the better film, and that is story. Alright, the last category, the story. First, we'll start off with 1980. The story starts off with 2 camp counselors going to have sex in the cabin, which leads to Kid Jason drowning in the camp, in the lake. And then Pamela Voorhees, which we don't know at the time, kills both the counselors in the act. Now, we flash back a good bit later. They're reopening the summer camp, and trying to make it a big deal. This guy named Steve is trying to do it as well, with all these kids and counselors, the characters that we mentioned before. And they get picked off one by one by this unknown killer, which we find out is Betsy Palmer at the end of the movie, towards the end of the movie, after everybody's killed besides Alice. And it's a really decent story. Like, I enjoy the way that they led up to the villain, and the way they built the villain up, along with the way they kind of had things go, because it didn't feel long, it didn't feel drawn out, especially for a movie that was supposed to be just capitalizing off the popularity of Halloween at the time. So this movie did great when it came to story, especially at the end, where we find out that now Alice is in this like state where she's constantly in fear, everything like that, and she even gets pulled down by boy Jason at the end of the movie for one last jump scare. But I will say there is like a little bit when it comes to 2009, which I just don't like when it comes story-wise. I've alluded to this in the past, like recent, when I've been doing the other categories, and basically Friday the 13th 2009 has 3 time periods, mainly because New Line kind of wanted to make it their own new thing, I guess, which in some cases works, but in some cases it don't. So we start off with the black and white era, where it shows Pamela Voorhees in 1980 killing all the counselors, and she gets her head chopped off. So it basically takes the whole movie of 1980 Friday the 13th, and it sits there and does it in like 5 minutes in a flashback sequence when credits are rolling too. And at one point, like, it's fine because it gives us a new story and everything like that, and it gives us like another take on the story. But in another way, it kind of sucks because we could have seen something like that. But New Line, obviously, the reason they did this was because not a lot of like common viewers would understand that the original Friday the 13th had Betsy Palmer as the villain and not, it had Pamela and it didn't have Jason, because everybody just wanted Jason pretty much. So this was their way to actually have that part in it, which is fine in a way, I guess. I understand, but it doesn't like discourage the fact that it still isn't the greatest, in my opinion. Then we move on to this group of teens, like stereotypical teens. There's a stoner, there's a fucking couple, and then another couple, pretty much. Like a good couple and a bad couple that just want to have sex. We get a sex scene, and then we get a scene where Jason just kills all of them, basically, besides one, who is Whitney, who we find out is the brother of 6 months later, or like a couple weeks later, however have you. Sometime it's another time jump, basically. So there's 2 time jumps in 3 different timelines in this movie, which makes it kind of confusing and a little irritating, but still, it's whatever. We follow this timeline with the other characters, and it's Danielle Panabaker as Jenna, and then Trent and Clay and Chewie and fucking all of them, basically. And they're all staying at this house. Besides Clay, he's looking for his sister, and the others are staying at this house that Trent owns, basically, because of his family or whatever that's right by the lake. And basically this entire movie takes place in that area and vicinity, pretty much, and around Camp Crystal Lake, somewhat around it. And it turns out that Jason has taken Whitney captive and not killed her. And it's kind of because he looks like his mother, and it's kind of I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of it. The story is okay. It's just not the greatest. It's not better than the original story, which is why I'm going to have to say that 1980 is the definitive winner of this compare and contrast. 1980 is better by 1 point, one category. So the winner is Friday the 13th, 1980, with the scores being Friday the 13th, 1980, 3, Friday the 13th, 2009, 2. With that being said, thank you guys for watching this compare and contrast. I hope to see you guys for another one, and peace.